You're standing in your bedroom and you know exactly what you need. You can see it clearly in your mind. You walk across the hallway, push open the door, step into the kitchen, and the moment your foot crosses the threshold, your mind goes completely blank. What were you looking for? You stand there, staring at the refrigerator, the cabinet, the counter, and nothing comes back. The thought is just gone. You retrace your steps, walk back into the bedroom, and suddenly it hits you. There it is. You needed your charger. But the moment you walked through that doorway, it disappeared. This happens to almost everyone. It's so common that we treat it like a minor glitch, a small failure of memory, a sign that we're getting older or not paying attention. But what's actually happening inside your brain is far more interesting than simple forgetting. Your memory didn't fail. Your brain is working exactly as it evolved to work. It's just working in a way that makes perfect sense for survival and not much sense for retrieving things in modern houses. Mirror isn't a single filing cabinet. It's not a hard drive where information sits waiting to be accessed whenever you want it. Memory is deeply tied to context. Your brain stores experiences as events, and those events are bound to the place where they happened. The emotional tone of the moment, the people present, the light in the room, the sounds around you. When you think about why you went into the kitchen, you're not just retrieving a fact, you're retrieving an entire moment. And the moment you stepped through that doorway, you left some of that context behind. Cognitive psychologist Gabriel Radvansky at the University of Notre Dame has been studying this exact phenomenon for more than a decade. His research on what he calls the doorway effect shows that walking through a doorway creates what the brain interprets as a psychological event boundary. An event boundary is a moment when your brain fundamentally shifts from one mental context to another. When you cross through a doorway, your brain essentially says, okay, I'm closing the file on that room and opening a new file for this one. The memory you formed in the old context gets filed away in association with that old room, and your brain doesn't automatically carry it forward into the new context. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. Imagine you're a hunter in prehistoric times. You're tracking game across the landscape, and you move from one valley into another. Your visual field changes completely. The sounds change. The smell of the air is different. The ground beneath your feet is different texture. Your brain needs to pay attention to this new environment now because this new context might have its own dangers, its own opportunities, its own rules. Holding on to memories that were relevant to the old context would actually be a distraction. It would slow down your ability to process the new context. So your brain developed a system where crossing a major contextual boundary in the ancestral environment, that would have been something like entering a new clearing, moving into a cave, crossing a river would trigger a mental reset. But here's where it gets interesting. The memory you formed isn't gone, it's not deleted. It's still there in your brain, filed and stored and perfectly intact. The problem is access. Your brain is looking for the memory in the context where it was formed, and you're now asking for it from a completely different context. When you walk back into the bedroom, your brain returns to the original context, and suddenly the memory becomes accessible again. You remember instantly. The information was never lost. The retrieval queue was lost. This is why your memory feels better when you go back. It's not because you're reliving the moment. It's because you're returning to the physical and mental context where that thought was originally formed. Your hippocampus, the brain region that binds memories to their contexts, can now find the original file because you're back in the filing system's original location. Radvansky and his team ran an experiment to test this in a controlled way. Participants watched a movie of a character moving between rooms performing various tasks. Sometimes the character walked through a doorway to do the next task. Sometimes they stayed in the same room. When the participants were tested on what they saw, they were significantly more likely to forget details about tasks that occurred across a doorway boundary compared to tasks that happened in the same space. But here's the crucial part. When those same participants were tested again while mentally placed back in the original room context, or when they actually returned to the physical room where they had watched the initial footage, their memory improved dramatically. The same effect shows up in digital environments too. Researchers have observed that people have the same difficulty remembering tasks across different computer windows or different tabs or even different websites. The brain treats these as context shifts, even though you're staring at the same physical screen. The medium doesn't matter. What matters is whether your brain perceives a significant boundary between contexts. So what's actually forgotten is not the memory itself, but the connection between the memory and your current mental state. Your brain is optimized for context-dependent retrieval. It's asking, what do I need to know right now in this specific context? And since you're no longer in the context where you decided you needed something, the brain says, that's not relevant to right now. The fact that you're now standing in the kitchen triggers a different set of associative networks. You start thinking about food, about dishes, about the refrigerator. These thoughts crowd out the context-dependent access route to your original goal. This also explains why you sometimes find yourself standing in a room with absolutely no idea why you came there, and you'll never remember, no matter how long you stand there, because you're not going back to the original context. The doorway was the event boundary, and unless something resets your context back to where you were, the memory stays locked away. That's why the advice works. Retrace your steps, go back to where you were thinking about what you needed, and the moment your brain returns to that context, the memory comes flooding back. You're not remembering on purpose. You're just returning to a place where memory can find itself again. The modern implication of this is that our buildings and our lives are full of doorways. We live in spaces designed with lots of transitions. We move between rooms constantly, often doing different things in each one. We also navigate digital spaces with countless boundaries. You're thinking about a work project in an email, you switch to a messaging app, and the thought dissolves. You're having a conversation in one room, you move to another, and you forget what you were about to say. The more transitions you create, the more opportunity for this effect to happen. But understanding why it happens changes how you respond to it. You're not losing your mind, you're not getting older and becoming forgetful. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It's compartmentalizing contexts so that each environment can command your full attention. The fact that you forget means your brain is working well, not poorly. It means your brain is successfully marking the boundaries between different mental spaces. The next time you walk through a doorway and your mind goes blank, pause and recognize what's actually happening. Your memory is context dependent, and you've just crossed into a new context. You have a few options. You can stand there and think back to the bedroom, allowing your memory to search in the right filing system. You can retrace your steps physically, or you can pick up your phone and search your recent thoughts, or text yourself, or ask someone else what you were planning to do. Modern technology has given us a new way to bridge the gap that our brains created. Tonight, when you walk from one room to another and forget what you came for, you'll know that it's not a failure, it's a feature. Your brain isn't breaking down, it's switching contexts. And the moment you switch back, or the moment you understand why the switch happened, the answer will be waiting for you on the other side of the boundary. You didn't forget what you came for. You just crossed the doorway, and your brain did what it's done for hundreds of thousands of years. It closed the file on one context, opened a new file for another, and kept you focused on the present moment. That's not a glitch, that's the design.